Going to teach this morning about our zone blitzes, and what our zone blitzes are three under, three deep coverage, where we'll have a defensive lineman drop into coverage. We'll either overload the field or the boundary or the middle of the field based on the blitz that we call. That will determine who is going to drop and where you're going to drop. So the basis of this discussion, first we're going to talk to you about Sooner, which is our field overload pressure, meaning that, as a description, it's a zone blitz with 5 rushers and 6 coverage men. Again, field overload blitz, where we're bringing 2 linebackers from the field. So anytime we bring a field overload blitz, we are going to set the front to the boundary, meaning our 3 technique goes to the boundary. We're going to call this stack IB, which is assume the front IB, and we'll get to that in a second, what exactly that means. And all of our zone blitzes have terminology so that you understand exactly what they are. So we've given mascot names to these blitzes. Sooner, we know, as the field overload pressure, and we can complement that through game time decisions. We can call it Oklahoma as well. So Oklahoma is the Sooners. Again, IB front set to the boundary regardless of the formation. So we'd like to call the field overload pressure from the hash. And there are some situations where we might be slightly in the middle of the field and this blitz is called. Now it's up to our Mike linebacker, who sets the front, to set the front the right way so that we know the field overload is coming opposite of the 3 technique. So our rules for Sooner as the field defensive end, again, alignment based on front set to the boundary. Your job is to collapse the B gap area. That's your one responsibility, because what's going to happen is the Mike linebacker is blitzing off of your spark or your long stick. He's going to read your rear end. He's going to make a determination where he goes, or his best blitz path, based on where you are. So yes, this, you should have to tighten your alignment down, because we want you to get to that B gap area and collapse it. We want you to bring offensive players with you. Our field defensive tackle must be in a 2-eye technique. And you'll see some tape here where there are some times where we're in a 1. We need to assure that we're a 2-eye technique away from the call, inside shade of the guard. Your job is to collapse the A-gap area through the V of the neck of the center. So we want to try to pull that guard with you a little bit. If you're in 1 technique, you don't influence that guard very much. Now, the boundary tackle, your 3 technique. You guys are reading run to pass. You read run and you react to pass. What that means, your job, power through the V of the neck of the next adjacent lineman, which will be the offensive tackle. If you read a down block from him, your job is to maintain that gap leverage. Okay, so understand and read the flow of the next adjacent hat. If you get a high hat read, that comes into pass. You're going to spark to the outside cage rusher, replacing the defensive end's pass rush lane. So as everybody's sparking, you're replacing rush lanes versus the pass. Field defensive tackle is replacing the boundary defensive tackle's rush lane. Field D end is replacing the field defensive tackle's rush lane. So you read run, you react to pass. The field side, you guys are collapsing down. The boundary defensive end, your alignment is based on the front set to the boundary. Get to a couple fronts here in a second, what they look like. Versus run, you are an easy support player, which means that you are the contained player. Where we're dropping 3, if you read run, your job is the hard joint. The technique that we call hard joint is using your inside forearm and making sure that nothing gets outside of you. So as you read run, you need to be in a position where nothing will get outside of you to funnel everything back inside. So if you read a puller or trapper coming down, now you're not sticking and prying. You are hard jointing. You're holding your ground firm to make sure nothing gets outside. Versus pass, you're the seam curl flat player. You are to protect the seam. There are some situations versus double wing where you can collision number 2 or through the tight end to the curl flat area. And then versus a detached number 2, you're a middle hole dropper, replacing the Mike linebacker with the switch call. And I'll show you that here in a second. But our seam curl flat drop is roughly to an area of about 7 yards, and we don't ever want to turn our head to the quarterback. And we'll work those techniques, but we want to see everything that's coming in front of us, because we want to be underneath hitches and we want to be underneath curls. So again, Sooner, field overload pressure, front set to the boundary, away from the call. We need to assure that we have a 2-eye. The boundary side, or the side to the call, you guys read run, you react to pass. This boundary defensive tackle, you have to get to the outside cage to protect the outside in case we get quarterback scrambled to the outside. Several pictures here. Okay, base pro trips formation, what we see a lot of nowadays, or pro trips off, but 3-man surface over here, 3-by-1 formation, 1 back, 11 personnel. Okay, we actually have a heavy call. So this is where your IB comes into play. Tight end set, there's your B, 6-eye technique. Again, here's your 2-eye. We're always going to have a 2-eye away from the call. Front set to the boundary. Boundary side, field side. Your job is the field defensive end. Collapse the B gap area. Influence and bring offensive linemen with you. 2-eye. Through the V of the neck of the center, collapsing the A gap. Boundary defensive tackle. 3 technique to the call side. Call set, front is set to the boundary. This is the field. Your job, through the V of the neck of the tackle, you read run, you hold this B gap down firm. You read pass, you have to work to the outside to become the outside cage rusher. Easy support. We're a seam curl flat dropper, 7 yards underneath the hitch or the curl. Picture number 2 to our right. Ace Pro, 11 personnel. This is a formation that we see a lot of. Boundary side to the left, field side to the right. Front set to the boundary. Okay, we don't need a B here. Why? Because we are easy support, which means nothing gets outside of us. That means you have to put yourself in a position to play easy support and not let anything outside of you versus the run. Field side, tighten down. Okay, loose 5 or tight 5 technique here. Collapse the B gap. Mike is reading off of your rear end for his best blitz path, and our adjuster's coming from the outside. So 2-man overload. 2-eye, away from the call side. We want to influence this guard in this center. We want to pull them with us, working to the cage of the defensive tackle versus pass. And now our boundary defensive tackle, 3 technique, which is where we're setting the front, versus run, you got to hold down firm with this gap as you're sparking. Versus pass, you have to work to a position to get outside, to be the outside cage rusher, which we don't want to do, and you'll see it on tape. Our guys have a feel, you want to feel things, but as we get a feel, everybody wants to jet back inside. Keep the outside because we don't want anybody coming outside of us. Boundary defensive end, again, easy support, seam curl flat dropper. Now, there's a change in our rules. And we should know this as defensive ends, whether or not we get a call from the linebacker saying easy or switch. This is something to put it on us that we need to know. Very simple rules. We know we hear Sooner, we're easy support to the boundary. If we have a detached number 2, what that means is if you line up in your position and you look to your left and there's space and you see 2 receivers detached, very rarely will we get this, but you'll see it on tape. That's telling us we're getting a switch call here. What switch means is that you're replacing the Mike linebacker who is on the blitz, the field overload blitz. You now become responsible for number 3 as the middle hole dropper, 3 under 3 deep. This outside linebacker should give you a switch call. Reason we do this is because there's no way you can carry a seam on a number 2 from your alignment. So if you look over and you see 2 detached, you know it's a switch call. You can call it yourself, but you should know that I'm the boundary defensive end and I see 2 detached, I have a switch call, I have to replace the Mike. So know where he is, again, about a 7-yard drop, any number 3 coming across or the back comes out, we know we're responsible for number 3. Same rules apply. You guys read run, react to pass to the boundary. Front set to the boundary, away from the call. As you see in this picture, this is Ace Pro, one of the top formations if we do get a switch call. This is where our IB comes into play. There's our B, our 6I, defensive end. Why? Because we want to collapse the B gap area. There's no way from a 9 technique that you can collapse the B gap area. So tighten down in this 6, collapse down the field, tackle here, collapse the A gap area. You two collapse the field to open it up for these two. HBO, help a brother out. Okay, let's watch some tape from this past season and look at and correct some of our mistakes and see some of the good things that we did. First play, we get ace trips, 11 personnel. Sooners to call. Field overload blitz. Boundary side, short side of the field. Forgot to mention that to you. The boundary side is the short side of the field. The field side, a lot of grass out there. That's the long side of the field. So field overload pressure. Our adjuster, our mic. Front set to the boundary. So we should have a left call in this picture. Read, run, react to pass. Too much. Let's look at it from the tight. Okay. Good alignment. Front set to the boundary. Easy support. Outside. Great. Put ourselves in a position to play easy support. 3 technique. Left call. Away from the call. 2I. Okay, get a little tighter to this guard. And then a 5 technique backside. Again, our responsibilities from the field. Collapse the B gap. Through the V of the neck of the center, collapse the A gap. Replacing a cage versus pass. Read, run, react to pass. He steps down, you got to hold firm the B gap. Out here, easy support. Nothing gets outside of you. Hard joint player. If you want to pull, you take your inside forearm and you make sure nothing gets outside of you. So we'll slow it down here. See our boundary, our field defensive end, great. Keep collapsing. We get stuck there a little bit. Mike could redirect off, but he's got a pretty decent blitz path. Here we are through the V of the neck of the center, holding down the A gap. 3 technique, spark, read, run. Okay, now, yes, at some point you're going to get lost in the sauce. You got to get back into it and make a play. But as you can tell from the clip, you know, the field defensive end, yeah, it's one of those things, he gets stuck and he's working like hell to get down inside, and we need to have a better blitz path here from our Mike linebacker, tighter off the rear end of the defensive end, which is where this ball cuts. So pretty good up front. Could be more aggressive. Picture number 2, Ace Pro. 2x2 formation with the nub tight end, 11 personnel. Boundary, field. Field overload pressure. 2 linebackers from the field, 3 under, 3 deep. 1, 2, 3. We're rolling. Okay, 33 coverage. Boundary defensive end, seam curl flat dropper. And the one thing I'll tell the boundary defensive ends, if you are dropping and you do get sprint away, hold firm backside, because once you start running, now you've opened up for tight end throwback or some sort of gadget play backside. Your seam curl flat dropper, get to the seam curl flat. Good drop here. Okay, get there. Underneath the hitch, you see it right there. Okay, we got to work the technique a little bit. But let's look at it from the tight to see if we're in a good position here. Okay. Boundary, right call, easy support, 9 technique outside, 3 technique to the boundary, great. Now, away from the call, we need a 2I. We're in a 1 technique here. We have to be able to influence this just a little bit. Okay, we've tightened down our 5 technique because, in simplest terms, you 2 guys for the field, your job is to create havoc to open it up for these 2 guys. Replacing rush lanes versus the pass. So let's look at it here in slow motion. Now, we read, run, react to pass. It looks like a run read for us initially. Now, pretty decent job from our field defensive end. Yeah, at some point you got to be a player and you see the flow, and now he works back outside. But we're in a good position. We're sparking here exactly where we need to be. We're dropping seam curl flat, and it's really not a bad picture. And we want to call these blitzes. The purpose for us calling these blitzes is we want to attack what we presume based on tape is the man side of the protection. So it gives us an opportunity to overload one side, and if we can influence that field side, we're bringing more than they can block versus the pass. So a lot of these blitzes you'll see on third downs or in passing situations, which is good because we've done good film study and we see the call. We have the right calls sometimes, but we just need to be playmakers at a particular point. So, next picture. I'm a defensive end to the boundary, short side of the field. I look over. Oh boy, there's two detached receivers. There's no way that I could play seam curl flat versus a number 2 detached. So now the outside linebacker should give you a switch call. If he doesn't, you should know it. Call it out. Switch, switch, switch. What switch means to you is now you're replacing the Mike's responsibilities. The middle hole dropper for any number 3. You get a crosser, go ahead, take him out. But you drop to the middle hole. See if we get it. Great. Perfect. Looking for anything coming out. Any new number 3. In a pretty good position here. Overload the field. We're getting some pressure. Let's look at it from the tight shot. Okay, we've adjusted. We adjusted in this game. We set the 3 technique here to the field, but it's a good picture for what you see. So disregard what you see here, but knowing that we have to collapse the field, and this is a little wrinkle that we added to it called a dog, which brought the Mike linebacker right through B. He was C gap, and our 3 technique collapsed down. But point and emphasis being, we wanted to see you open to replace the Mike versus number 2 detached. And what you can see from this clip right here, pause it. Defensive tackle, regardless of what we did in an adjustment here, your job versus pass is to replace the cage of the defensive end. We're not in a great